Within the 1915 Elmira College Bulletin can be found this declaration, a declaration that would not be limited by time. It was declared, after all is said and done, the best and safest way to judge an institution is by its product. Throughout history, the most important product of any educational institution has always been its graduates, and all that these graduates accomplish in helping manifest a productive and flourishing society as they positively influence all the many aspects of the society that give it form, substance, and worth. In 1969, Elmira College became coeducational, ushering in what some might call the modern era in the history of Elmira College. But you see, that would be wrong to think in this manner because since its creation in 1855, Elmira College was always an example of modernity when it came to a woman's opportunity to gain a higher education equivalent to men, and the new windows of opportunity that were open to women as a result of this education during a period of profound social transformation in the United States. This is a story of innovation, radical thought, aspirations, achievement, opportunity, creativity, bravery, and professionalism in the lives of the women graduates during Elmira College's first 100 years, all within a liberal arts educational environment. It's a story that as of now has only been superficially addressed, a story that has all too often ignored the accomplishments of hundreds, if not thousands, of Elmira College women who have contributed to not only the redefinition of what it means to be a woman, but even more importantly, who have contributed to the multifaceted nature of society, internationally, nationally, and within the numerous local communities in which these women have interacted. Elmira College was indeed the first college that was created in order to give women the opportunity to be granted a college degree on an academic level equal to that of men. History has often placed Vassar College in this most eminent place in history, but to do so is misplaced. Elmira College was created in 1855, 6 years before the founding of Vassar, and just 7 years after the creation of the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions, a document that was created as a result of a conference held in Geneva, New York in 1848. This document has often been called America's Declaration of Independence for Women. By 1855, there were institutions that afforded women some type of higher education. Certainly some of the well-known examples being female seminaries created by outstanding people like Emma Willard, who founded Troy Female Seminary in 1821 in Troy, New York. Catherine Beecher, who founded the Hartford Female Seminary in 1823, and Mary Lyon, who founded Mount Holyoke Female Seminary in 1837. Mount Holyoke would receive its collegiate charter in 1888 and be renamed Mount Holyoke College in 1893. Hartford's Catherine Beecher was influential in helping Horace Mann create what is referred to as the common school era in the United States. The sister of Harriet Beecher Stowe, Catherine, who died in 1878, is said to have lectured to the women of Elmira College during the last couple years of her life while living with her brother, the Reverend Thomas K. Beecher of the famous Park Church in Elmira. In 1870, Beecher, a close friend of Mark Twain, presided over Twain's marriage to Olivia Langdon. The Langdon family had been instrumental in the founding of Park Church in 1846. A major reason for the church's creation was a dedication to the anti-slavery movement at the time. What is significant about the creation of Elmira College is that the major goal was to give women the opportunity to gain a true undergraduate degree and all the deeper insights and profound study associated with this degree that certain male institutions in the United States had been granting since the creation of Harvard in 1636. Interestingly, however, according to the first Elmira College catalog published in 1856, the college was by no means intended to serve as some type of incentive to a professional career or as a school of empirical reform. In other words, supposedly upon its creation, the college was not trying to change what some considered the correct place for women in the social order of things, nor was it to be seen as a haven for those radical feminists. And not surprisingly, Because the college was closely aligned with the Presbyterian Church at the time, it was proclaimed that the institution is designed to be especially distinguished for a high regard to the moral and religious culture of its students. At the same time, however, as I'm sure Dr. Drew Faust, former president of Harvard University, would agree, history has shown over and over again, once you begin giving people an education, these people tend to begin to chart their own destinies and seek to achieve their own aspirations, regardless of some who seem to try to limit these aspirations and destinies. This is true for many of the women who would attend Elmira College and would seek a professional life as a result of their undergraduate college education. And though it was claimed that the college was not created as an incentive to a professional career, for 162 years Elmira College would be an institution that helped create women, and now also men, who would choose a host of career paths in order to help meet the needs of an ever-growing, vibrant, and increasingly diverse America. Certainly many women who graduated from Elmira College, particularly during those first few decades, chose a life in the home and not in the professional arena, although what often happened was that those who chose domesticity over professionalism were still very active in diverse community endeavors, using their degrees to add credibility, insight, and critical thought developed at Elmira College in order to empower themselves to action. Oftentimes, for example, these women were engaged in alumni activities in numerous ways, two important endeavors being the development of the Gold Key Scholarship Award and the creation and functioning of numerous Elmira clubs within communities throughout the nation. And of course, many women would choose to pursue careers in medicine, literature, business, the arts, and religious outreach, to name just a few. Thus we see that the greatest legacy of Elmira College is the graduates that were nurtured and the lives that the college helped mold, who helped alter the status of women in America while helping society advance. Throughout the college's existence, an educated core of graduates would help destroy an ideology that believed women were less rational and less intellectually competent as men. Of course, during the first 75 years or so in Elmira College history, teaching was the primary profession most accessible to women who sought a career. And how appropriate it was that the first graduate of Elmira College began her professional life as a teacher in an environment that actually demonstrated the educational resolve and courage that all teachers who call Elmira their alma mater can be both proud of and encouraged by as they engage in this noble profession. In 1859, Helen M.T. Ayers became the first Elmira College graduate. Orphaned at 2 years of age, Helen Turner was adopted by her aunt and uncle and took the name of Ayers. In the summer of 1860, as the Civil War was about to erupt, according to an 1863 article in the Yates County Chronicle, Helen went to teach in Mississippi. According to the Chronicle, after 3 years' residence in Dixie, getting away was not the easiest task, but was accomplished very much to Helen's satisfaction. She and 2 or 3 other mistresses, as these teachers were sometimes called, reached New Orleans by dint of perseverance and the aid of friends, and notwithstanding the suspicion and surveillance that rests upon all Northern people. In another account from a relative in 1955, according to family legend, Helen was transferred under a flag of truce from a Confederate gunboat to a Union gunboat that enabled her to leave the South via New Orleans. Upon her return to New York, Helen would eventually leave teaching to help with the family business. Yet she continued her intellectual pursuits while demonstrating her interest in education. For example, Helen found the first Chautauqua Circle in Penn Yan, New York, and ran as a candidate for school commissioner. It was also said that she was interested in the suffrage movement, and her acquaintance with books and general information seemed boundless, and her love and appreciation of the beautiful in art, especially in nature, was very marked. It didn't take long, however, for Elmira College to become immersed in resolving the dualism created by the fact that it was a liberal arts college, while also engaging in the creation of certain types of professionals and specific majors that were seen as important in order for graduates to gain some type of professional career. By the earliest decades of the 20th century, This dualism was something that Elmira College was continually in the process of addressing and resolving, charting a course that would allow for a symbiotic relationship between a liberal arts curricular environment and the professional realities and aspirations of its female students. In 1921, for example, Elmira College President Frederick Lent would be one of many EC presidents who would take on the task of explaining the goal of the college and the manifestation of that goal as seen in its graduates. Lent proclaimed, "The oldest college for women aims to develop an alert mind and vigorous body." He went on to rationalize, "It fits the student to earn a living." And being influenced by a progressive spirit that was certainly impacting educational institutions at the time, Lent explained that the goal of the college is to train a woman to do her own thinking while increasing her efficiency. As Lent went on to explain, Elmira College believes that every woman should have a vocation, since there is no financial security for anyone except in the ability to be self-supporting. And once again, negotiating those waters between a liberal arts curriculum that seeks to create a well-rounded and profoundly educated person, and perhaps also being invigorated by the fact that women had just received the right to vote as a result of the actions of thousands of suffragettes and their supporters, both female and male. President Lent pointedly told Elmira College that the young woman who is contented to occupy a subordinate position, who shrinks from the toil by which the powers of the mind are cultivated, should not go to college. If she is without ambition, she may reach an easier goal by shorter methods. Elmira College is for those who want an abundant life. Elmira welcomes the student who has an earnest purpose. In 1932, Elmira College once again reminded the world that it was still a liberal arts college, the goal of the school being to open the mind, to correct it, to refine it, to enable it to know and then use knowledge to give it power over its own faculties. Application, flexibility, method, critical exactness, sagacity, resource, and eloquent expression is the noble objective of the liberal arts college. But just as importantly, in 1935, in a short essay appearing in the college's alumni news bulletin, the following was written by an Elmira graduate regarding others who had graduated from the college. The writer asked the following: "Has Elmira College given them the background which lets them advance far in their chosen field?" Of course, the writer could confidently answer in the affirmative, asserting, "I call to mind an exceptional businesswoman, deans of girls in several high schools, college deans, a registrar, school principals, members of the staff of one of the finest schools of nursing in the country, physicians, college teachers, high school teachers, research experts, a lawyer or two, outstanding figures in social service. And I know that the files of the alumni office number more varied and interesting careers than I have space to mention." So what we see in 1935 was that, as this writer stated, Elmira College rejoices that she is able to help her daughters begin to make a living, but also was proud that the college was teaching its students how to live rich, satisfying, and useful lives. Between 1860 and 1923, of the 420 students reporting who had been awarded a Bachelor of Science degree, 178 of those reported that they had been or were teachers. And of that 420 reporting, another 139 reported that they had been or were in another career. During that same period of time, of the 846 Elmira College graduates who had reported back to the Alumni Association with a Bachelor of Arts degree, 252 reported that they had been or were teachers. 449 reported only their address and name, while the remaining 145 reported that they had been or were involved in other careers. In other words, we see that to one degree or another, of the 846 women reporting, 397 reported that they had been or were in a profession of some type. This doesn't mean, however, that of the 449, some of these individuals had never been or were in a profession. But what we do see is that by 1923, and in spite of dominant views of a proper place for women in society, Many Elmira College women worked in some type profession, and there was a correlation between women attending Elmira College, attaining a degree, and then using that degree as a bridge to a professional life. Looking at the responses of these graduates, we also find that professions other than teaching included dietitians, x-ray assistants, clerical work, medicine, newspaper journalists, authors, social work, business women, and religious outreach. So while Elmira College may not have been a so-called radical center for overt feminist reform, the reality of the importance women felt about the role of education and need for education in their professional lives, as well as the status of women in society, seems rather clear. It seems that the radical transformation as far as the role of women in society when it came to Elmira College can be summed up by this little proverb: the proof is in the pudding. Now, who were some of these graduates whose often unheralded legacy still, after all these years, continues to reinforce the structural integrity of Elmira College's educational foundation? Many graduates, including teachers, became very active in Elmira clubs across the country and also active in alumni activities, which some see as the lifeblood of Elmira College. For example, Mary Bullard Lewald began her life as a teacher. After marriage, she gave up teaching but became the president of the Elmira Club of New York City. Nell Ingram Gosselin was a teacher who became president of the Elmira Club of Chicago. Jane Pratt, president of the Waverly Club, started as a teacher, then went on to Harvard Graduate School. She also traveled and studied in Europe. And of course, there were many other teachers who were being recognized, particularly by Elmira College and its Alumni Association, for their outstanding professional work and the lives they led. For example, Mary Catherine Gelston, who after several years of teaching high school became a teacher and principal at Alma College. Upon her death in 1939, it was said that the students who came in contact with her still acknowledged their debt to her for her understanding and faith in them. In 1939, Helen Hibbard retired after teaching for 36 years at the Elmira Free Academy. An editorial in the Vindex, a New York State magazine, noted the many hundreds, if not thousands, of students influenced by Helen. The magazine confidently asserted, "Surely the judgment of your career, Miss Hibbard, must be that the world is a better place because you lived and worked in it." In 1920, World War I just ended 2 years earlier, and women would finally be able to vote. That year, Ethel Nichols, a 1918 graduate who had first begun her professional life teaching high school in Carthage, New York, took a position as head of the boarding department of girls' schools in India through her connection with Baptist missionary work. In 1922, in a letter published in the Alumni News titled "An Elmira Girl in India," it was reported that she and 4 other women took a 21-day hike through the foothills of the Himalayas. At one point in the trip, Ethel's sense of adventure and zest for exploration, all too often seen as male characteristics at the time, became evident when she stated, "Standing at 14,000 feet, we stood on the border of Tibet and looked in." And this is something of which we certainly can empathize today. She also wrote about the Muslim-Hindu tensions in India that were taking place at the time, and the danger and political instability that existed, which required everyone to always keep their bags packed. But what Ethel also made clear was that the teachers at the school were always resolute to go with their girls as protectors if the need arises. You see, this is what this Elmira College graduate and teacher did. In addition to doing her part in missionary work, she was an adventurer, she was an explorer, she was a learner, she was an educator, and she understood that no matter where she worked, she would protect her students. By 1922, like so many teachers who had been educated at Elmira College, Ethel Nichols understood her professional responsibilities to her students, even in difficult and challenging situations. As we all know full well, this is part of what it means to be a teacher. Later, in 1947, we read this in the Elmira College Bulletin. "In all of Elmira's honored history, there has been many a more famous and outstanding alumna than Rena Rockwell, but none with her type of mind and character that made her a leader among teachers, her professional colleagues, and in political groups, and made her and her home a rallying point for her classmates for the past 42 years. We of the class of 1905 early sensed these qualities in her and chose her for class president for 3 years, freshman, sophomore, and senior. As the Alumni Association went on to explain, Rena was a teacher whose executive ability and quality of leadership was recognized later by her Teachers Association and political groups. Her intellect was recognized and admired. It was her type of mind that was her chief asset in college. She was able to get to the main point or difficulty of a problem, analyze it quickly, and then solve it. There were many fine things said about this teacher and educated woman. Her professionalism, power of thought, and dedication to her students was lauded. And of course, there was always this. Where Rena did not care to sew a fine seam, she could drive and take care of a horse and carriage, and later drove an automobile over a good part of the USA, and could at least diagnose some of its ills and do minor repairs if she needed to. Many Elmira College graduates, not surprisingly, began their careers as teachers, which then led to other professions. For example, Sylvia Chatfield Bates began her professional life as a high school English teacher in Granville, New York, and then in Schenectady, New York. She went on to do graduate work in literature and composition at Radcliffe College and Boston University. She then went on to become fiction editor for the Woman's Home Companion and an independent writer, eventually becoming a member of the Department of Journalism at New York University. A prolific published writer, she also even produced an adaptation of Melville's Moby Dick using carefully selected words from the New York State Teacher's Word List, and a word list found in the Teacher's World Book, created by the renowned progressive educator and psychologist Edward Thorndike. The book was designed to be used by young readers and new immigrants in the process of learning English. In 1928, a positive review of her adaptation appeared in the English Journal, a resource for English teachers. Molly Anderson Haley began her professional life as a high school English teacher and later became a poet whose inspirational poems became highly regarded. The magazine The Churchman described her as a person who also had a wide range of experiences as an educator and social worker. In 1924, one of her many published poems appeared in the journal Contemporary Verse, this one in particular focusing on religious intolerance. It was simply titled Intolerance. Cross the way my neighbor's windows shine. His roof tree shields him from the storms that frown. He toiled and saved to build it, staunch and brown. And though my neighbor's house is not like mine, I would not pull it down. With patient care my neighbor, too, had built a house of faith wherein his soul might stay, a haven from the winds that sweep life's way. It differed from my own. I felt no guilt. I burnt it yesterday. Dr. Anna Speisman, whose career started as a teacher, also became president of the Elmira Club in Philadelphia. Anna later would earn her Ph.D. from the University of Pennsylvania. She married and became Anna Speisman Starr, eventually becoming the director of the psychological clinic at Rutgers. She did pioneering work in early childhood education and testing and was featured in Life magazine in 1953. Her son became the first professor of elementary education at Elmira College after a formal elementary education degree program became part of the college's curriculum in 1956. The list of Elmira College women who were able to successfully pursue a career during a period of time when so many social barriers stood in their way of achieving their professional aspirations is impressive. For example, in 1928, Dr. Mary West Niles retired after serving 46 years as director of the School for the Blind at Canton, China. She received her M.D. from New York Medical College for Women in 1882 and went directly to Canton as a medical missionary. During her tenure in China, in addition to the daily responsibilities of attending to the medical needs of so many, she translated a textbook on obstetrics into Chinese and prepared a primer on Cantonese phonetics. The first school for the blind in China was established by Dr. Niles. Eventually, 3 other schools for the blind were established by her in that country. Upon her return to America, Elmira College's alumni proudly proclaimed, "Probably no one person has done more to relieve suffering and promote Christian living in China than has Dr. Niles during her 46 years of almost continuous service. She is one of Elmira's daughters whom the college has most reason to be proud, and whose splendid life and service we are most grateful. In 1935, Dr. Caroline Lawrence, class of 1891, died after 38 years of serving the medical needs of many thousands during her career. Caroline received her MD in 1894 from the Woman's Medical College in Philadelphia. Of the many accomplishments of Dr. Lawrence, it should be noted that in the autumn of 1896, 2 years before the infamous Battle of Omdurman, in which the British secured their colonial power over Egypt and the Sudan, Caroline and her associate, Dr. Anna Watson, arrived in Egypt where they were involved in medical missionary work. In 1910, Dr. Lawrence left Egypt because of health reasons, while Dr. Watson left in 1912 to care for her terminally ill sister. However, their early medical efforts eventually led to the creation of a thoroughly equipped modern hospital in Tanta, Egypt, right in the heart of the Nile Delta, where hundreds of Egyptian women and children are treated daily. The hospital is now called the American Hospital of Tanta. These poignant words by her alumni sisters truly describe the heart and soul of Dr. Lawrence. So deeply rooted was Dr. Lawrence's love of the child, especially those children of Egypt, that she and a friend adopted a little 10-day-old baby who was brought into the hospital from a harem, a little waif of the desert, with no name and no family. The child was brought to the United States, where she grew up and prospered because of Dr. Lawrence. The legacy of Dr. Lawrence and her associate is that Tanta Hospital has grown to now provide a full range of adult and pediatric medical care for males and females of all races and creeds. In 1931, after having been honored by not only Elmira College, but also throughout the entire nation, the Alumni News Bulletin sadly reported the following. One of Elmira's most distinguished alumni passes away. Alice Robertson, who had attended Elmira College in the early 1870s, had become, in 1920, the second woman to serve as a representative in the U.S. Congress. Helen Hughes was a 1918 graduate of Elmira College who had majored in math and also taken finance courses as a student. In 1934, Helen, then a New York City business executive, was recognized as the only woman in the entire $1.5 billion motion picture industry who sat on the board of directors of a great motion picture company. At the time, she was secretary and director of Universal Film Exchange Incorporated and an officer of various subsidiaries of Universal Pictures. Elmira College graduates and students never shirked their responsibilities to the nation, and this was particularly true during wartime. Early in 1942, we read this in the Elmira College Bulletin. Elmira College, in its 86th year, is preparing for the third time in its history to adapt itself to the needs of a nation at war. Elmira girls of today are showing the same spirit of patriotism and eagerness to be of service which characterized their predecessors during the Civil War and First World War. Of the many actions the college undertook to help the war effort was to offer some elective courses that were needed as they related to the needs of the nation. As it turned out, the most popular course among the Elmira students at the time was auto mechanics. There were actually quite a number of Elmira graduates who ended up serving the U.S. military during World War II. Often these graduates were nurses. In fact, an entire presentation could easily be devoted to all those Elmira College alumni who had served in the military during the war. One such person was Lieutenant Jean Splann, a 1940 graduate. She was a nurse who was stationed in New Guinea and Australia. And what is not only amazing, but says a great deal about the character of the women who graduated from Elmira College, is that Lieutenant Splann reported that during her first week in New Guinea, she met 3 other Elmira graduates, Helen Hicks, Eleanor Rutten, and Mildred Smith, who were nurses in that theater of operation. The career paths of Elmira College alumni took many different directions, some of which we might consider quite unexpected, and while perhaps unheralded, were nonetheless of importance to so many. One such example is Nancy Fisk, a 1948 graduate, who had a full-time career with the Girl Scouts. In 1953, Nancy became district director of the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Girl Scout Council. Nancy was responsible for 13,701 girl members, 676 troops, 4,944 adult volunteers, and a staff of 15 professional workers. Nancy chose this career because, in her words, it is a time-tested solution for women looking for jobs which combine the opportunity for community service with fun, adventure, and variety. Scholarship and the development of intellect was always the primary objective of Elmira College. Just one of the many examples of this reality was Marjorie Grosbeck, who was awarded a prestigious pre-doctorate graduate fellowship by the National Science Foundation for the 1952-53 academic year. As an undergraduate, Marjorie had competed in a field of 2,800 applicants, including graduate students and instructors from across the nation. 400 fellowships were awarded among this group, the recipients being determined by the results of a special biology examination given by the foundation. And what is equally impressive is that during the summer of 1952, before embarking on her fellowship program, Marjorie would be a research assistant to Dr. Anna Whiting, genetics expert at the University of Pennsylvania. And speaking of intellect combined with service, in 1951, during the Korean War, Major Else Klein, a 1935 Elmira College graduate, became the Army Reserve's first woman doctor assigned to active duty. Else had come to America 20 years earlier from Alsace-Lorraine. She spoke no English, had no money, and had no friends or relatives in the U.S., but she did have a great desire to earn a college degree. After working for a year, she entered Elmira College, earning a Bachelor of Science degree in 1935. In 1938, she received her M.D. from Syracuse University, eventually becoming a specialist in dealing with the dreaded disease tuberculosis. In an interview for a Philadelphia newspaper in which she explained her rationale for accepting this position in the military during wartime, Major Klein stated, "To put in 10 or 12 hours of work instead of the required 8 is the least I can do to show my appreciation to a country that has done so much for me." Clearly, Elmira College did not produce graduates who could be labeled wallflowers. Mary Gray Peck was a graduate of the class of 1889. She had an interest in music and taught for a while before returning to the academic life. She was a student at the University of Minnesota, received an M.A. in English, began teaching at the university while working on a Ph.D. Her friend and Elmira alum, Frances Squire Potter, also at the University of Minnesota, both left the institution to join the suffrage movement in 1909. Mary later became a secretary for Carrie Chapman Catt, the president of the International Suffrage Alliance, and eventually had a biography about Chapman Catt published in 1944. Catt, accompanied by Mary, visited Elmira College in 1928 and were recognized by the college, along with Frances Potter, for their pioneering work in the women's equality movement. Both Peck and Potter had articles published in the Woman Citizens Library, a systematic course of reading in preparation for the larger citizenship. Potter's excellent article, titled Public Education, focused mainly on the history of public schools in America, while Peck's article was a fine historical work titled Women's Suffrage in the United States. After the 19th Amendment was passed, Peck became even more deeply involved in human rights work. The fact is, these few individuals we looked at today now represent just a tiny fraction of the many hundreds, if not thousands, of both women and now also men who have graduated from Elmira College, past and present, who achieved, who accomplished, who contributed to society and continue to do so. And although perhaps overlooked, the graduates we looked at today, reflecting Elmira College's first 100 years, are indeed part of a larger core of graduates representing a vast array of achievers in different areas of human endeavor who have given Elmira College the status it deserves. This is the product of Elmira College. This is the strength of Elmira College. This is the pride of Elmira College, and how Elmira College's past helps assure a stronger and brighter future.